Job interviews are one of the most challenging and stressful parts of trying to get the job. And how you act during that job interview is going to make a huge difference in whether you're successful or not. The good news is, we're here to help. Let's move you along on your job quest. Hey everyone, it's Matt from Project Rebuild, and hopefully you've watched our before the interview video and you're ready for the moment that's about to hit, because when that door opens and your name is called, it is officially job interview time. And if you've ever auditioned for a play, or tried out for a team, or gone out on a first date, it might feel very similar to what you're feeling right now. Remember, the conversation you're about to have is going to play a big part in whether you get what you really want out of this, which is the job. So you've got to go in there ready to show that person you've got the skills and the personality to be an asset on their team. Interviews are all about communication, and you need to focus on both the verbal and nonverbal ways that we communicate. One of the most important elements of nonverbal communication is our body language. You want to use your body to show that you're confident, and you want to be presenting that confidence throughout the entire interview process. So, from when you walk through the door to when you walk out of the door, make sure you have your shoulders rolled back and your head held high. You don't want to be super stiff, but you don't want to slouch either, because that can show the other person that you're lazy or uninterested. And even though you're probably nervous, do your best not to fidget. Things like playing with your hair, shaking your leg, or biting your nails don't look confident, so try to avoid doing that. As you enter the area where the interview is going to be held and introductions start to be made, make sure you have your right hand free and available for a handshake. When people get nervous, their hands can get sweaty. So if that's the case with you, be ready to discreetly wipe your hand on your pants as you're standing up. Be firm, but not aggressive with your handshake. And if the person you're shaking hands with goes to break the shake, don't try to hold on. You should probably only shake 1 to 3 times, and make sure that you're smiling and making eye contact throughout that interaction. And that brings us to another element of body language that you're going to want to use to your advantage throughout the interview process, and that's eye contact. Throughout the interview, you'll want to make sure that you have eye contact to show that you're listening and engaged. Once that eye contact has been established, hold on to it for a few seconds, but you don't have to stare into their eyes for the entirety of the conversation. To keep things natural and comfortable, there's going to be times you break eye contact, usually only for a second or two, by turning your eyes to the side and then reestablishing that eye contact. By moving your eyes to the side, you're showing that you're thinking about something, as opposed to moving your eyes down, which can be perceived as dishonest or lacking confidence. Gestures such as nodding or using your hands can give you the opportunity to naturally break eye contact as well. The general rule of thumb is that throughout a conversation, you should be making eye contact with the other person a little more than half of the time. Anything more than that, and it might seem like it's unnatural or being forced, and anything less than that might make it seem like you don't want to be there. Another idea that can help with the concept of body language is if you mirror the interviewer.
And what we mean by that is following their lead throughout the conversation. So if they sit forward, you can follow. And if they're smiling, it's probably a good idea that you do as well. Not that you should mimic every single move that they make, but by following someone's lead, it indicates that you're both on the same page, which builds a connection. And that connection increases the likelihood that they're going to want you on their team. The other and more obvious way that we communicate is through words. As we said earlier, an interview is a conversation, and it needs to be a two-way street. You are going to have to be both an active listener and an active speaker. But keep in mind, you are the one being interviewed, so you'll probably be speaking more than the other person.
And while you don't want to babble, you don't want to be too short either. Talking too much can make it sound like you're unorganized, but if you're short with the interviewer, you're not going to give them enough information. So make sure you're ready with relevant details and examples of your professional accomplishments. You're also going to need to be ready for some small talk at the beginning of the interview. Now, while small talk might not seem important, it does help build a connection with the other person. So be ready to be polite if they comment about the weather, your commute to get into the interview, or just how you are today. Small talk is a great opportunity for you to break the ice and to build up a little bit of confidence as the interview gets started, so make sure to use it to your advantage. And no matter what you're talking about, make sure you talk in a clear and confident voice. It's always important that you're honest during the job interview, but make sure that whatever you're talking about is shining a positive light on yourself. Don't be negative about former employers, coworkers, or customers, even if your experiences with them were less than ideal. And while you're definitely going to want to have questions ready for the end of the interview, it's okay to ask questions throughout it as well. Try to avoid yes/no questions, which are also called closed-ended questions. Those questions can usually be transformed into an open-ended question if you try. So instead of asking, "Can I get promoted here?" you can ask, "What does a path forward look like from where I'd be starting?" Questions that start with what and how tend to get you the most information, so try to focus in on those. And towards the end of the interview, they're probably going to ask you, "Do you have any other questions for me?" Always have a question ready, and make sure it isn't about something that you've already covered in the conversation. That's going to make it seem like you weren't paying attention, so it's best to have multiple questions ready. Some good end of interview questions might involve their opinion, like, "What's your favorite part about working here?" Or maybe you'll look towards the future with something like, "What are the next steps in the hiring process?" And if you don't already have it, you want to make sure you get the interviewer's contact information so you can follow up with them. Now, as far as the actual questions you'll be asked during your job interview, there's no way anybody can know what they're going to be, but if you prepare for the most commonly asked job interview questions, you'll be ready to face anything. Some of the most commonly asked job interview questions include, "Tell me about yourself." "What would you consider to be your greatest strength?" "What are some of your weaknesses?" "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" "Why should we hire you?" "Why do you want this job?" "Tell me about a time you had a conflict at work." "Why did you leave your last job?" "Tell me about a time you disagreed with a decision that your boss made." "What are your proudest moments in your career?" We're going to take a deeper dive into how to answer job interview questions in the future, but for right now, the best piece of advice is to prepare and practice. If you know your answers of the most common job interview questions, you'll have a better idea of how to answer some of the uncommon job interview questions. As we've talked about in the past on JobQuest, money matters when it comes to your career, and money is the source of an ongoing debate when it comes to job interviews. While some people say that bringing up money right out of the gate can shine a negative light on a potential employee, others think that being upfront about money helps people and companies from wasting each other's time if their views on compensation don't align with each other. Our advice is if you decide to bring money up during the first job interview, don't do it early in the conversation, and remember, how you present things is going to change how they're perceived. Asking something like, "What's the salary range that you have in mind?" after you've presented yourself as a good candidate is much different than asking, "How much money will I make?" as soon as you walk through the door. As you reach the end of the interview, it's important that you show gratitude and thank that person both for their time and for the opportunity. It's also important to leave the interview the same way that you came in. Continue to practice good manners with everyone that you encounter and behave like a professional the entire time that you're there. So don't rip your tie off the second you get out the door, and don't go flying out of the parking lot either. Even though the interview is complete, the evaluation is not. So now that the interview is over, you might feel like you're finished as well. But if you really want that job, you still have work to do. Hit that subscribe button, check out our next video, which is all about after the interview, and let's keep taking steps on your job quest.